Okay, good morning students. So we were discussing the role of carbon credits. So while a transition tool, carbon credits are secondary to direct reduction tactics in achieving carbon neutrality and fostering sustainable practices for a low carbon future. So basically these carbon credits are what? Credit we know is something in terms of money or finance that comes into our account. So what is this carbon credit? So carbon credit is basically, if you try and understand, it is the process of allowing industries, factories or other such which burn fossil fuels, which utilize non-renewable resources, allowing them a limited emission of carbon dioxide by basically taking credit from them. Okay, so basically if this practice, if this strategy is adopted by all the industries and the government concerned, then there can be a remarkable reduction in carbon emissions. At least there will be a record drop in carbon generation, carbon emission, which generally which if not checked results in high emissions. So how this carbon credit works? So market mechanism, carbon credit create economic motivations for maintaining lower emissions, aligning economy with ecology. So it's a very unique concept of aligning economy with ecology. Means industrial activities will continue, but at the same time taking into account or without hampering the ecology, the flora, fauna, plantations and wild animal lives, forests and etc. So they are part of a broader concept known as emissions trading, which aims to incentivize the reduction of greenhouse gases emissions by providing economic incentives for entities to limit their carbon footprint. So this is a strategy for limiting the carbon footprint or carbon generation. So as this diagram describes, or this picture describes, carbon sequestration, carbon offset credits, greenhouse gas emissions, permitted sources buy credit to meet regulatory requirements, and again economy is generated, money is generated, and foresters implement waste management practices to generate credit. So what this picture suggests? This picture suggests basically amount is taken, amount is received for allowing a certain level of emissions from the industries, the factories and all. Okay, and so there is a limited production. If there would have been no regulations, there would have been much more higher production of carbon dioxide gases, carbon emissions, which would have increased the greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and in turn which would have resulted in more and more global warming. So basically there is a limited release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere or greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. For that some money is provided to the authorities. Okay, and there is also monitoring. Otherwise, if there is no monitoring, then the companies, factories would unscrupulously emit carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is basically carbon dioxide sequestration, and by this there is a limit to carbon dioxide emissions. So this diagram also, or this figure also, very effectively describes the process of carbon credit. See, one side, let me show you this, refer to this cursor. The industries, they are releasing carbon dioxide, okay, and at the same time when industry is operated, people get employed and all. So amount the industries offer to the government and authorities for permitting them to release carbon dioxide, okay, and then in order to combat that carbon dioxide, alternative sources of energy like the windmills, solar panels, okay, more and more growing of trees and afforestation, okay, it is practiced so that the carbon dioxide is balanced, and this will help in this footprint. This will help in reduction of carbon footprints, okay, and the arrow shows it will result in a healthier, cleaner environment along with prosperity in economics. So we are taking care of both economics and ecology. So this is basically the carbon credit market. So role of carbon credits. While a transition tool, carbon credits are secondary to direct reduction tactics in achieving carbon neutrality and fostering sustainable practices for a low carbon future. So these practices are very essential for ensuring a low carbon future, because if carbon dioxide generation is not reduced, if carbon dioxide quantity production is not checked, then it is going to affect our health, environment, ecology in the long run. The temperature is going to increase more and more globally. The Himalayan glaciers, they are going to melt down. There will be a permanent climate change. Summers will be much more hotter than the flora, fauna, plants and human beings would be able to survive, okay. Many species which are endangered right now, they'll be extinct, they'll become extinct. So it will be very difficult for human existence and existence of other flora and fauna if these are not kept into check. So carbon credit mechanics. So basically, project impact. Carbon credit arises from validated emission control initiatives including renewable ventures and afforestation. So there has to be ventures, there has to be initiatives basically for increasing more and more number of trees and other renewable sources of energy which emit less carbon dioxide, just like or which does not involve the production of carbon dioxide, just like windmills, trapping of solar energy through solar cells, solar panels, and similarly other such renewable resources. And verification process. A third party oversight assures the effectiveness of these green projects, legitimizing the credit's environmental impact. So tracking and valuing the carbon credits. So issuance. Projects receive tangible credits for verified emission reduction. So basically that issuance has to be offered to the industries by the respective governments and regulatory bodies, okay, and for that the companies, the industries, those who would generate the greenhouse gases, they need to register through proper channel and proper documentation process. Then market dynamics of carbon credits. So the first is the trading. So business acquire credits incentivizing carbon footprint reduction for financial gains. And the second is compliance. Carbon credits as a compensatory tool satisfy industry emission targets under stringent regulations. So there has to be a stringent regulatory body. The regulations have to be very stringent, otherwise the whole purpose is going to be affected a lot, and there will be unchecked generation of carbon dioxide gases emissions in the atmosphere, and which is consequently going to affect the climate and increase the global warming if it is not kept into proper regulation and monitoring. Carbon offsetting. So carbon offsetting is a practice aimed at compensating for greenhouse gases emissions produced in one area by investing in projects or activities that reduce or remove an equivalent amount of emissions elsewhere. So what is the basic idea of carbon offsetting? The idea is basically to balance, okay, or to offset the carbon footprint created in one location by mitigating emissions elsewhere. That means for permissions granted to certain industries, certain factories which are going to emit basically the carbon dioxide in certain area, so in compensation to that, the area surrounding that particular area prone to emissions, they are facilitated with utilization of renewable energy sources. They are facilitated with alternative sources of energy, okay, and the naturally available sources are trapped there, so that there is a balance in the amount of carbon dioxide emitted and carbon dioxide reduced. So there is a net zero carbon impact, or even a carbon negative impact if possible. So carbon offsetting, how to calculate the emissions. So to determine the amount of greenhouse gas emissions generated by particular activity, event or entity, this could include emissions from energy consumptions, transportation, manufacturing and the sources. So basically what are the sources of the greenhouse gases? Burning of fossil fuels, just like coal, petroleum, natural gases, all the transportation vehicles, okay, all the two-wheelers, four-wheelers and the different vehicles used for transportation of goods and materials, okay, burning of petrol, diesels, all these basically emit carbon dioxide. Similarly, industries, coal-based thermal power plants and other industries which generate carbon dioxide, methane, they are actually sources of greenhouse emissions. So investing in offsetting projects. So purchase carbon offsets from projects that either prevent the release of greenhouse gases or remove them from the atmosphere. So these projects can include renewable energy installations, just like wind energy, solar energy, hydroelectricity or tidal energy. Tidal waves are trapped basically for rotating of the turbine and electricity generated, and in a way carbon dioxide emission is reduced. So reforestation, if an area is if trees plantation in an area has been chopped off, then reforestation or planting more and more trees in that area, okay, so these afforestation initiatives. Then methane capture, methane which is CH4, which is generated again by burning of fossil fuels. So if the methane can be trapped and if it can be utilized, okay, methane from landfill sites and from energy efficiency projects, okay, if they can be captured, and for that if the mechanisms can be developed. So these basically refer to carbon offsetting. So I hope that the meaning is clear. Carbon offsetting basically refers to limitation of carbon production or reduction of carbon production, so that there is a balance in net production and the utilization or compensation for that carbon emissions. Then verification and certification. So to ensure that offset projects are credible and adhere to recognized standards, many carbon offset projects undergo third-party verification to guarantee that they genuinely contribute to emissions reduction or removal. So there has to be a third-party monitoring agency which will keep an watch on whether the carbon reduction initiatives are fruitful or not, whether they are effective or not in achieving their goal. Then retirement of carbon credits. The purchased carbon offsets are retired or taken out of circulation to ensure that they are not double counted or resold. This step is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the offsetting processes. So achieve carbon neutrality. What is the way out to achieve the carbon neutrality? So by investing in the offset projects, the entity or individual can claim to be carbon neutral for the activity or period in question. So carbon offsetting is often used by individuals, businesses and governments as a way to address emissions that are challenging or costly to eliminate directly. While offsetting can be a valuable tool in the broader strategy to combat climate change, it's essential to view it as a complement to rather than a substitute for efforts to reduce emissions at the source. So this carbon offsetting is very important tool for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. If the greenhouse gases emissions are not regulated, if they are not controlled, then the quantity of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and consequently the rise in global temperature will go on and on. So there has to be a reduction, a regulation in its production, and for that this concept of carbon offsetting is very, very important, and more and more it needs to be utilized and practiced at large, so that the greenhouse gases productions are limited, and in consequence the environment can be protected, global warming can be reduced, and climate change can be tackled. So that's all for today. We'll again discuss the next lecture of this module in the next class. Thank you so much.